Yeah, so this is what, number three?
Yeah, number one didn't get
Something like
recorded.
that.
Number two of recordings. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Shane, do you want to lay out the format to everybody for new timers, new people, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll get the board set up?
So here's the deal: is that we use GitHub extensively for all of our project planning, especially the GitHub boards. So the idea here is to have an open weekly planning session to be able to plan our boards, like clear our boards and get new stuff ready and talk about what's going to go on and go through the process that we've kind of outlined on how to pull new tickets in.
Yep. Is this big enough?
Yep, maybe a bit bigger. Let me see that blank column.
That should be plenty big.
I'm pretty sure it's way too big now.
All right, let's go with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, yeah, we're gonna just do as we usually do, which is move items, like start from the right side, review everything in here, review everything in there, and then see if there's anything else that we need to pull in. So there's a couple things that we've been working on that I don't think they're really represented here, right? Like there's all this generator stuff that we did today. Like a lot of this doesn't have issues, right?
Yeah, I gotta make them.
Yeah, so I think okay, so this one is in there. So number 3. So this fixes, oops. Right. And then, yeah. So let's make one for validations don't really work.
Yeah, like what DJV's please subscribe.
Yeah, that was weird. It's good enough for now. And then it's 27. Okay. See. All right. Does that help with the board? Guess not. All the like crazy automations, but that's okay. Well, what else was there in here? The docs generation out of everything.
Yeah. So there's not. I don't think there's an issue for docs generation out of client. Yeah. Like for example, type doc. Yeah.
Oh, right. If I do this, then it'll go through the automations.
Yeah.
Should have done that with the other one. Oh, wait. This is 28. Okay, cool. That pretty much covers that one. Then did this get?
So where is that? Where are all these tickets? Yeah. Yeah.
So those two are in review now, right? And then there was the other one that's like add the typings or whatever.
Yeah, it's right there.
Am I blind?
Yeah.
This one? Yeah.
Because it has an extra label.
JS. Yeah. Well, to start with, I had this like, because we'll have like multi-language ones, right? So
Oh, that's pretty sweet. Filter on label there.
yeah, like you just click the label and it filters it. Oh, these are all the bugs. Yeah. This one's like still in flight. We had like a couple things merged that helped it. Yeah, no, it doesn't do any of these things yet though. That's just the naming that we changed. Just to
Yeah.
like,
Why you like explain Steph what this ticket is?
yeah, right. That's another thing. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. So we should be going through each of these tickets and making sure that we all understand them, right? So the root CLI should support multi-languages, and that's for generator client. So let's start with like generator client is the tool you would use to pass a OpenRPC schema file in, and then get a JavaScript, or like, well, in this case, a then JavaScript client out, right? And it'll at some point support more languages than just JavaScript and TypeScript, and it's set up in a way to be able to handle this, because it has like template/JS. Well, like I have started kind of this branch just to give an idea. I go here. Where's this one? Yeah. So like in templates, you have like RS as well, right? And then there's like two folders in here. So like whatever's in here is just static files that get copied over. Whatever's in here is the thing that actually gets templated. So like if you wanted to write the Rust one, you just have to write one of these, but like the Rust variant. And so like I kind of started that in here. Just like copied this out of the like json-rpc client core, but there's a parody one that we probably want to use. I don't know if this is it or not, but just kind of ripped it in there. But anyway, the idea is like the generator client package provides this command line tool, like OpenRPC generator client. And I want to have it so that you can say like something to the effect of like some way of saying like make one for these languages. And in order to get that to work, basically there's a whole bunch of things that we need to do. Like we need to have this like command line code. It should like detect, it should first look at what languages are supported by like looking at what folders are inside of templates, basically. Yeah. I don't know if I've done a good job of explaining this, but like,
Yeah. So Steph, do you understand what that repo does?
Yeah, it creates the a generator client, so you could be making calls, right?
Yep.
well, like it generates the code that you would use to make calls to the API, to the JSON-rpc API.
Right. And that's what, like, for example, like let's say, let's say a multi-client client would use this thing to be generating the specs you need, right?
You use the spec, like, so like the server would basically, when you make like a product or a server or whatever, you're going to want to have all the docs around it, right? But what would be great is that if you could generate the client as well, out of the same definition, right? So that's what this is doing, is generating the actual like the actual JavaScript, like web browser client that's going to hit up the server, right?
Yeah. Like if I walk through what this test does, it grabs the examples, right? So that's open RPC. Oh, hold on. Examples should be coming up. Yeah. So like that's this guy basically. So this guy exports a bunch of example schema files, like a bunch of example API descriptions, right? So like, let's say we do like simple math or like, yeah. So here's like addition and, you know, subtraction. So the test is pulling in all of these examples, like the JSON, and then it calls this client gen function, which is like the client generator's main entry point, the one that the command line tool will call eventually. Like, well, it does call. So it's like getting it from that file. Anyway, so it passes it a client name. So like what you want your client to be named. In this case, this is like simple math, OpenRPC. So maybe I would actually want this name to be like simple math, right? And then what would I get? At the end, I'd get a folder called simple math with a JavaScript file in it that's been generated. And that JavaScript is like, you know, I can just now import it to my project, and it's just going to give me a really easy interface to use JSON, like the API, underlying simple math API.
Want to show what that looks like then?
Yeah. Hold on. I just want to show like, so like after this runs, it's going to go and like generate a folder with all of this code in it. So we're like testing that there is now a folder called test. And then if I go and try to require the folder, like if I try to import it, then I should expect that I get a function, and then I should be able to call it, right? Like I should be able to create a new instance of this client. Say I want to use the HTTP transport, and then like, yeah, I don't actually call any of the functions because it's very generic, but yeah. And then, sorry, Shane, you wanted me to show him?
Like, what does this thing generate?
Oh yeah, so it would generate something like this. Oops. Oops. Oh, I guess we did merge it. Yeah, so this is what it generates basically. So inside of that test folder, this is basically what you'd get, right? You'd get your generated client, you'd get your generated docs for how to use the client, which can be easily pushed as a GitHub page so that, bam, oh, like here's your docs, right? We got like, okay, get block number, here's like the JavaScript method for it, right? And it returns a JSON-rpc request.
Oh, Isaac is here.
Yeah, hi guys.
Hey, man.
Hey. And then,
yeah.
I'll just finish what I'm saying. Yeah, so like the client is, yeah, like basically all just TypeScript with all the stuff from the spec file all annotated inside of it. And then like and it's TypeScript because TypeScript compiles to JavaScript. So if we want to provide a JavaScript one, we just compile the TypeScript. And if we want to provide a TypeScript one, well, like here it is. And then it comes with, yeah, basically like simple stuff like this, like gives you this build. We're sort of trying, like figuring out more what that life cycle is going to look like. Like once you generate it, how do you regenerate it? Like, do you even regenerate it? Like the end goal is pretty much to just have this be something you can stick in CI and never actually do any of this ever. Like you just like stick it in CI, give it the endpoint for your service, and it'll just auto fucking update. You know, like ping it every 10 minutes. Sorry, I really shouldn't swear in these, but ping it every 10 minutes, and if it changes, then generate new clients. Like simple. That'd be obviously very naive, sort of like simplest way of doing that, but that's kind of like the end goal, this kind of stuff. But yeah, so as you can see, no README, right? Because we don't want to put the docs like these are the docs. These docs are going to be way better than any README doc you'll ever generate or write, for that matter. So,
That's the type doc directory.
yeah. So yeah, this is literally just serving this index file right here, right? So if I were to say I think I have it actually if I do, I'm in my terminal and I'm typing open docs/index.html, and this is what opens, right? So you can see it's just static. Yeah. If we were exporting multiple classes, it would look crazier, right? But it's just one class at the moment. But then, yeah, so what I'm getting at is then, you ask, well, what should we put in this README? We're trying to figure that out. What would be a base thing that you would want to put in some sort of README like this? And in order to have it appear in the generated result, you would just create a new file here, right? Anything you put in here is going to get copied in as it is, no templating. So you could put how to use, this stuff is all very generic, right? My client equals require, index, you know what I mean? Yeah, index.js or whatever. Basically, there is some base level of docs that we want to put in the generated result, but also there's probably a good chance that you might want to also add some stuff manually too. And
we definitely want some other stuff hey, this was actually generated by OpenRPC. Here's some links to OpenRPC, blah, blah, blah. What is OpenRPC? What does it do? That kind of stuff. So there's a bunch of boilerplate stuff that everything should have to kind of give people a good baseline for hey, you just generate it and then you probably don't really need to change much.
Yeah. The life cycle of it should be documented in the README, right? If people shouldn't go and manually edit this TypeScript, then that's what the README should say. And it should be saying what you should do instead. If ever it comes up in your head where you're I got to edit this file, surely you're trying to do something else. And we should be directing them to the place where they should be doing that.
Exactly. This was generated from this particular OpenRPC document located here or whatever. And we kind of know where it was probably from.
Yeah. And then, there's a whole ton of considerations to make when you start thinking about the life cycle of the generated artifacts. So I don't want to put answers into everyone's heads. Just think about it. If you have any ideas, next meeting, let's hear them. Maybe we can have a little powwow at the start about generated artifacts, and should they be basically idempotent in the sense that you always regenerate everything, or should it be generate once as an init and then it does in place updates if you've updated your schema or if the generator has updated. And then also, this all needs to take into account the varying ways in which people would want to version this stuff. Because, you on one hand, you might want to have a client per version. On the other, you might want to have the version passed into the client and then applied as a parameter. And maybe that's an extension or plugin or whatever. I mean, it's going to get really complicated if we start talking about extensions and plugins right now. So,
maybe this is the same version as your API, but there's going to be a lot of cases where it's not. Maybe maybe you want this client to be 1.0, but your API is like 9.7, right? Like,
yeah.
Those
All
are
right.
lots of different
So-
ways to
Pull us back here. So that's pretty much where we're at with the client generator as a whole. It's a decent, I guess, overview of that as it stands. This ticket, is so doing some of the more specific things. Like this is pretty prescriptive about how I intend to actually do it. But so like I need to read the languages from the templates folder. So like look at templates, see what languages are in there, and then basically make the command line in num on that list. And then provide language options in the CLI. That's part of the num thing I just said. Provide configurable post template step. So each language is gonna, so in Node, for example, or for this TypeScript one, I'll just bring it up because it'll be easier to talk about. So if I go into, not that one. If I go to this code here, here. So like this is the function name that I've been calling it right now, bootstrap generated package. So like step 1 copies all the static stuff. Step 2 takes the templated stuff, gives it the data to template it with. And then step 3 is you have this folder with all the templated and static stuff in it now. What do you want to do? So in Rust, it would be like, you'd basically make a build, and invariably every language you're just going to make a build here, right? So for us, that's like npm install and then npm run build. And then and then you look at like the static thing, and I don't need to go down that, but
like for Rust, it might be like compile, right? Like whatever you need to do for your specific language after you're like in the directory and you're good to go.
Yeah. So like my goal is I want to make this dead simple for people to add new languages. And what that requires is to bring this up as a first class citizen to the to this client generator interface thing, and like define that as like, maybe start a README part of it that's like how to add a new language. And then it would be like, well, part of adding a new language is define the bootstrap generated package method for your language, right? So like maybe it's just as simple as tacking on the word like JS at the end of this. Or maybe it goes down a more like a different path there. But generally speaking, there's going to be these like language specific not life cycle, but language specific hooks into the flow of generating this stuff that you'll need to be able to inject specific, language specific things. Like another example is when we just did the whole TypeScript thing, we had to generate the typings, right? So like we had to go from OpenRPC schema to a bunch of like interfaces and types. So that's not really, it doesn't really translate too well to say like Go or Rust, because like they might have like different convent. Like say in Go you just have structs, right? Like so everything's going to be a struct over there, and it's going to look a lot different. So that would be another thing that would be a language specific thing, is like each language you would add would need a way of, if it's strongly typed, and interestingly, like, JavaScript's not, but like, that's why I want to use TypeScript, is because strongly typed gives you crazy docs and crazy generation stuff and amazing in-editor support, all this stuff. So anyway, yeah, that's like the big one, I think, out of this. And yeah, this kind of coincides with that, is like I said, like writing into the README that part about how do I add a new language. So that's it for that. Yeah, so Shane, do you want to talk about this one? Or
yeah, so there's a lot of places where, like, okay, maybe even we can start with the name of this project. No, the project board, I mean. So, like, we've been kind of flip-flopping on the, like, canonical naming for OpenRPC, and we've settled on this. And obviously the org is open-rpc, so where you need to use dashes, you can basically, is where we're going with that.
Well, it's like there's basically there's really only two variants and one rule. The variants are titleized and basically like in code version of it, or like yeah. So like the titleized one is this capital O capital RPC, because RPC is an acronym, open is not. And then if you're talking about like slugs or like in URLs or in code where fitting, basically it's all lowercase with the dash. And then if dashes, the rule is if dashes aren't allowed, then just don't put it.
Mm-hmm.
So then it just becomes that. So like some places, maybe variable names you can't use with dashes or whatever. So you just drop that. Yeah. And then, we were running out of our 40-minute free meeting limit here. So speed things along, but
Let's start moving this stuff forward. Like, we spent way too long on, well, I think we spent just enough time on generator client for everyone to understand.
well, yeah, it's good because the stuff's recorded and like at least maybe somebody will watch it and get a better idea of what it is and where we're at right now. Okay, let's rip through. So Rust client generator, that's like dependent on that, obviously. I kind of started it. It's in shambles. It doesn't work at all.
Yeah, can you delete that out of there? We shouldn't have like branches in there.
Yeah, agreed. Add error support to Playground. So Playground, if you don't know, Playground is this. Whoa, that's my history.
Oh, show me your history.
On the internet forever now.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the Playground. It's like where you can sort of start putting together your spec file. This is like Monaco editor, and we're calling it actually probably in the future the docs Playground because it's like dual purpose, as in it's the language independent docs, meaning that it should have no references really to any languages, and small asterisks there, not going to get into it, but
it's for the API, right? Like you can copy these examples and put it into Postman, and it's for the API, right? It's not language specific docs, it's API specific docs.
Yeah. Like, so, yeah. So the idea here would be like, let's say I had a, I guess I changed this word, but like, let's say I had like this was simple math server, right? Where, it just gives me addition and subtraction API, right? Simple as that. So if I had like simplemath.com, docs.simplemath.com would take me to here, right? Whereas I might have simple math clients and then a JavaScript one in there. And then in that case, you're talking about the language specific wrapper for the service, not the service vanilla as itself as it stands. Now, yeah, I think we should probably just leave it at that, just because we only have like not a lot of time and we got to go through a lot. So
yeah, that's good. That's a good overview.
Yeah. So Playground needs error support, meaning that if I look at it inside of these methods, it has like params, results, and examples. Well, like in the spec, we have error objects, which let you define custom like application level errors along with their messages. One, we have a very bad lack of examples that have this stuff in it. Two, we have they wouldn't show in the playground right now anyways. So that's pretty much what that is. And
so that's like meta errors. So you're talking about handling error types in the API and not about the playground itself as an editor, as an application actually handling errors.
Exactly. I'm talking about these errors, like the error object here in the spec. This is pulled straight basically out of json-rpc 2.0 spec. And it's basically, this is the way in which you would define a error that is not a predefined error code.
Application defined code.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I think the code, like these need to be some like required fields in there. So
yeah.
Anyway, so I'll do that in a real quick second here. Come on.
Fighting against the clock.
I know. What was this one again? Oh, required fields on errors. Cool. And then, yeah, so add a top right logo, not super important.
No, top right logo, let's call it done. Because like if you look at the playground, we'll call that the app bar, and it's done. Yeah, I'll link it to the proper pull request later.
Yeah. Right. I think we got to put that back to discuss.
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Pretty far away from that. This is in progress now.
It's cool. I've got I'm gonna waste time. I've got the website open to just what you're looking at, and I can see you on my second screen moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man,
so I think you already did this, didn't you? No, we didn't.
No, Mitten said he might pick that up. So.
Okay. So this one is like for the playground. How I was saying how it's like it's docs playground because it's both. Well, like we want to have this code just detect the subdomain. So if it says docs, then it should start with it collapsed. And if it says playground, then start with it open. And then also, if you don't want to use subdomains, it should also work with like the path after the host.
Yeah, or like anything, query string, something.
Yeah, like just many ways of configuring the default state in which you would open it so that like, you can say like, if you just put the link saying docs, it's not going to open with this editor that seems kind of confusing if you were looking for docs, right?
And also like, it would be nice to configure the URL that goes in that URL bar at the top.
Yeah.
Like bar. So that's another.
Yeah, this thing. One so that you could like, yeah, exactly. Like there's currently two ideas for deployment schemes for this playground, docs playground. So the first one is we host docs playground and allow you to put like a query string like URL equals and put whatever you want. Hey Mike, we only have 2 minutes 30 seconds left in this meeting, unfortunately, but the recording will be posted later. But yeah, so by putting the URL in here, then I could just like send out a link to my docs that would just use my services URL like this, and I never actually have to deploy or host the playground is the point, or the docs playground. And then the alternative is that you might want to actually fork it and then have like this kind of like way of pre-configuring it so that maybe it doesn't show this top bar, or if it does, it has a different name, and maybe there's no search bar thing because it's like, it's your docs, not like whoever else wants to use its docs, right? So there's these two, like, imagine Microsoft wants to use this. They're not gonna like link to OpenRPC's deployed version of it. Very unlikely anyways. Like we want to like be able to support the various ways that people might.
Yeah, like the stuff we're talking about here is like the Lamborghini stuff, like if you're doing an entire product, right? So like you should be able to support all of it. This thing's gonna end soon, so let's start ripping through the rest of the tickets.
Well, it's ending like right now.
Well, I think we did go through them, right?
Yep.
So I think that's a good place to end there.
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do to help or support you specifically?
Well, buddy, like, I think we need to get more clients together. If you could help us do like the Golang one or the Rust one, like we're pretty much in a state where we can get people to help us like do that. And also, like you said, like having someone like you would be great to help us auto-generate the Go docs as well and Rust docs or like crate docs and all that shit. Right?
All right. Well, it looks like it's not going to boot us off here.
It will. It will. It's like 15 seconds now. So.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. If like I'm going really hard today on getting this root CLI should support multi-language stuff done. So like I'm hoping that by tomorrow it'll be like pretty obvious how you could add, say, a Go one, and that would be a really great way for you specifically to help us out. Secondly, trying it out in projects